Here's a story at iflscience.com. It's written by James Welton, and it's entitled The Silurian Hypothesis. Could an advanced civilization have lived on Earth millions of years before humans? And Mr. Felton begins. In Doctor Who, an alien species called the Silurians exists. Technologically advanced humanoid reptiles who lived long before humans, going into hiding and being basically undiscovered again until everyone's favorite time-traveling alien came along in his phone box. So far, not so science-y. However, in 2018, two scientists from the University of Cambridge named their paper The Silurian Hypothesis. Would it be possible to detect an industrial civilization in the geological record? They named this paper after the fictional species. Published in the Journal of Astrobiology, the paper does not argue that there was a technologically advanced species long before humanity, but proposed the interesting hypothetical question of whether it would be possible to find geological fingerprints of a bygone civilization that expired millions of years ago. One of the key questions in assessing the likelihood of finding such a civilization is an understanding of how often, given that life has arisen and that some species are intelligent, does an industrial civilization develop? Quote, humans are the only example of which we know, and our industrial civilization has lasted so far roughly 300 years, since, for example, the beginning of mass production methods. This is a small fraction of the time we have existed as a species, and a tiny fraction of the time that complex life has existed on the surface of the Earth. This short time period raises the obvious question as to whether this could have happened before. As well as being an interesting hypothesis to ponder, seeking to answer the question could also help us search for signs of advanced civilizations on exoplanets. As the paper points out, humans have left notable marks on the planet that will certainly last for many years in our relatively short time of altering the planet's climate and ecosystems. However, that doesn't mean that these changes will be detectable millions of years from now. In fact, the record we leave, for instance, in the sediment, may be only a few centimeters thick. This may be true even if we survive for much longer than our current age. The team writes, the longer the human civilization lasts, the larger the signal one would expect in the record. However, the longer a civilization lasts, the more sustainable its practices would need to have become in order to survive. The more sustainable a society, for example, in energy generation, or in manufacturing, or in agriculture, the smaller the footprint on the rest of the planet. But the smaller the footprint, the less of a signal will be embedded in the geological record. The team discusses other markers we could leave for a species millions of years from now, or that may have been left for us from a species millions of years ago. Some would be indistinguishable from naturally occurring phenomena, such as the Cretaceous and Jurassic ocean anoxic events. But others would be clear signs that we were here, and we absolutely trashed the place. The team writes, we speculate that some specific tracers would be unique, specifically persistent synthetic molecules, plastics, and potentially very long-lived radioactive fallout in the event of nuclear catastrophe. Absent those markers, the uniqueness of the event may well be seen in the multitude of relatively independent fingerprints, as opposed to a coherent set of changes associated with a single geophysical cause. End quote. The team does not give a definitive answer in the paper. Definitive. But suggests that if there were other ancient advanced species to be found, they will be discovered through exploration of elemental and compositional anomalies in the sediment record. They conclude, while we strongly doubt that any previous industrial civilization existed before our own, asking the question in a formal way that articulates explicitly what evidence for such a civilization might look like, raises its own useful questions related both to astrobiology and to the study of the Anthropocene. We hope that this paper will serve as motivation to improve the constraints on the hypothesis so that in the future we may be better placed to answer our title question, which was, the Silurian hypothesis: could an advanced civilization have lived on Earth millions of years before humans? And subtitled, if a technologically advanced species existed on Earth before us, they may have left traces. Any notes? Oh, thank God there's some notes. Got to be careful now. There are some comments. Another day says, folks seem to be forgetting about all the stuff we have left in space. Sure, stuff in near-Earth orbit won't last long, but we have left objects in geosynchronous orbits, and even further out in graveyard orbits. Beyond that, we have left stuff both on and around the Moon and Mars. We even have probes left behind on asteroids, whose surfaces have often remained relatively unchanged since before the Earth even existed. Guys, there's a freaking car floating around out there. I don't know who would just spend the money to put a car in space, but it hasn't been the U.S., unless you count the one on the moon. Another day concludes, there's one thing of which we can be almost certain. If an advanced civilization existed before humans, they certainly were not spacefaring. Otherwise, where are all their defunct satellites or abandoned Mars probes? And you could answer that. You could answer those objections. Because the only way first of all, the satellites over 1 million years are all going to have crashed to Earth. None of those in close orbit around Earth are going to be left. And of the ones remaining, how are we going to know they're there in the first place? You only know if it's there if you lost it yourself and you're tracking it yourself. Now about this, there's even less of a chance of finding probes on other planets that we've left, or that they have left. How are you going to find a needle in a haystack? So I don't think those arguments are very well thought out. Let's see if there's anything in the replies. The problem is we're thinking that any advanced life might be of our scale, but what if it's not? Another day responds. Show one more reply. Gandalf says, the problem is you are a troll.